Welcome to the Femsplainers. I'm Danielle Crittenden.
And I'm Christina Hoff-Summers.
And welcome to this next week of dry January.
Oh, no, please.
I see after last week's champagne blowout, you've brought actually a very fine-looking port.
I don't know if it's fine looking. I found it in the back of a closet with a cork on it. I don't know when it was put on there. Because I'm trying not to drink as much.
You were going to bring in, admit it, you were looking for the Harvey's Bristol
Harvey's Bristol
find it. Cream.
Did I leave a bottle here? Oh, can you bring it next time, please?
Ella's trying to protect you from bad booze.
I want my Dubonnet. So I have this theory that if I buy Dubonnet, like the lowest form, that I won't drink it or, old things. And so it helps a little bit, I mean, there's no reason why I can't drink. I'm just following your example. And we keep getting harangued by people. So,
well, there was actually in this spirit in the Atlantic, there was an article asking why there weren't more anti-alcohol movements, given that there's so many anti-drug, and they make a point that except for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which was formed, I think, either in the late 70s, I guess.
But that's against drunk driving.
Right, but not about just drinking in general. This writer in The Atlantic says, the headline is America's Favorite Poison. And it says, unlike in previous generations, hardly any formal organizations are pushing to reduce the amount that Americans drink. And she goes on to say that Americans would be justified in treating alcohol with the same wariness they have toward other drugs. Beyond how it tastes and feels, there's very little good to say about the health impacts of booze.
This has not been proved. This has not been demonstrated. There is evidence that it's actually healthy and it promotes well-being.
Well, she says, she goes on to say that the idea, this is our favorite statistics, I think we can just hold on to this regardless, but it says, the idea that a glass or two of red wine a day is healthy is now considered dubious. Not Dubonnet, dubious. At best, slight heart health benefits are associated with moderate drinking, whatever that means. And most health experts say that you shouldn't start drinking for the health benefits if you don't drink already. Well, I'm trying to give people who are observing dry January some more things to feel smug about.
It's important to be smug. I know we have some listeners who aren't drinkers. I didn't drink in my 30s and 40s.
Really?
It just didn't taste good to me.
Really?
It wasn't until I came to D.C.
That's because you were a smoker.
Not then.
Oh, wow. You were really healthy and virtuous. What happened?
I don't know. I don't know what did I do for fun?
I don't know.
I was working. I was writing books.
Yeah, you would think that would lead to smoking and drinking.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know. But I have a serious question. I do need to have a vice, but a safe one.
Yeah.
Now, once in a while, you can get addicted to something positive. I tried to get addicted to jogging and being on my Peloton. It didn't work.
Yeah.
So I want a positive addiction or something that...
Did we talk about, Ella, I don't think we talked about last week. No, because your boss came on. Yeah. But did we talk about having edibles at my holiday party? Ella, did we discuss that?
I think we discussed that several months ago.
Okay.
Oh, but we did it.
We
did it.
We did it at your
party, and we did it at the end. Please note, I didn't drink through the whole party, which, by the way, was a first for me at this party. And then it got 11 o'clock, and I was sick of myself. Like, this was just not fun. I wanted to relax. And so a relative of mine, who shall be nameless, gave us these gummies that she'd bought from California, and she said, try this. And she gave us each half a gummy. And then... first I said, this isn't working. And then the next thing I knew, I was staring at these cakes on the table and laughing. And then I thought, maybe it is working.
I think that we have to try more edibles because
But we got really stupid. That was the problem with it. It wasn't like having like the perfect one glass of whatever, and then you're just jolly and chill. We sat. Do you remember how we ended up that evening? We were sitting next to each other on my sofa. It was like 1 a.m. And we were giggling and we're staring at each other's shoes and having this incredibly in-depth conversation about our shoes.
You had pretty great shoes that night.
Well, so did you. But the point was,
shoes.
men, I mean, a couple guests came up and they'd sit and they were trying to talk to us about serious things. And we're going like, I really love that buckle on your shoe. That's really awesome.
But here's the thing. I've never liked marijuana from the beginning. And I'm, a flower child from the 60s. But
I never liked it either, yeah.
It made me sleepy and paranoid. The only reason I'd smoke it was because when I stopped smoking cigarettes and somebody had a joint, I just wanted a cigarette, so I'd go and smoke it just like a cigarette. And then it was, then I'd have this, I would just be paranoid and sleepy. But this edible made me think that I did not have the right quality. And this just gave me a sense of well-being.
Well, you didn't have to smoke it, which was first. But I don't know. I realize people like it because you can withdraw. It's the opposite of alcohol. I feel like it was sort of antisocial. Unless somebody else was high with you, like you were.
On the joke.
And in on the joke. You just became the most boring, withdrawn, self-absorbed. No, I'm not saying you. One did. And then afterwards I was in my bathtub.
My chief objection to marijuana is I thought it made people boring.
It makes us boring. And then I was looking, I ran myself a bath like 2 a.m. at this point. And I'm watching the water going, whoa, that is so beautiful the way it comes from the faucet. And I think, okay,
I know. And I went home from your party. It was already late. And somehow I was downstairs on the couch. I don't know. I think it was on Twitter.
Don't go on Twitter.
I don't want to know what I tweeted.
Well, at least you probably didn't get upset at what you read.
Oh, no, I
Twitter.
loved it. I was bonding.
You guys are so nice. Yeah. Well, I think if we remember, after Sober October, they joked there'd be Bender November. So what comes for people doing dry January, February, fallout?
February.
Then you have to go and have like
out.
Parched March, then you got to go back. Oh God, it will never stop. But anyway, okay, so we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We've got a fabulous guest coming on, Marissa Orr, author of the book Lean Out. She worked at Google and Facebook, and what she has to say about women in the workforce will blow your mind, change your mind.
She's a feminist, an emancipated woman of the new millennium, but she doesn't want to be exactly like a man.
But she's also got all this research of why women are not succeeding. But she's going to tell us about that. So
not
she's coming on
by
certain standards,
but succeeding in other ways.
So we're going to talk to her, and
can we talk about this kvetching about the Oscars.
Oh yes,
the Oscars. What it tells us. In the Washington Post had an article by Alyssa Rosenberg. What the 2020 Oscar nominations tell us about white men and carrying on, and she's deploring the fact that women's movies about women weren't nominated. She's not pointing to very many movies that had the qualities that were worthy of nomination. I think Little Women was worthy of nomination, but that was the exception. She just doesn't like the fact that we don't have a quota system.
Look, I know, but listen, she has a point. She writes, 6 of the 9 movies nominated for Best Picture, 1917, Ford versus Ferrari, The Irishman, Joker, Jojo Rabbit, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, are almost entirely about men and white men. And a 7th, Marriage Story, is substantially concerned with masculinity. Okay, we can take issue with that.
I don't agree with that.
But okay, 1917, a lot of white men fought in World War I, so Ford versus Ferrari.
We should have had quotas for the trenches.
Yeah. The Irishman, okay, that is white men.
Quotas for organized crime.
Joker, sort of incel-oriented, yep, that's going to be what? Jojo Rabbit, Nazis,
well, it was
white men.
Directed by Taika Waititi. He's not a white man.
Right, but it was about Nazis, and Nazis are white men.
There were some women.
Well, okay, but they're white. They're white. And it was mostly about white. I mean, there was his mother in it. And then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, white men. You know, Christina, I think we have a problem here. Actually, no, but it's also the problem. It's about like female directors. The director of Little Women, who last year did Lady Bird, and Fleabag at the Golden Globes. The actress. I'm so bad at remembering the actress's names. Ella, do you remember the name of the actress?
I don't, but I love Fleabag.
Yeah, and she wrote it and directed. I mean, so that cleaned up.
Writing the new James Bond movie?
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah. So
I mean, women are coming into.
In fact, they're turning James Bond into a woman.
And
which I think is a bad idea.
It was actually the comedian Sarah Silverman had this a long time ago when she was less woke and trying to make it as a comedian. And she said, you know, don't whine about it. Just be undeniable. Be so fabulous they can't overlook you. And that's what women are doing. And this idea that we have to be kvetching all the time and whining about it and asking for quotas. What people want are great movies.
Great stories.
Great stories. They can be told by men or women. It's probably good that we've raised awareness, you know.
Right,
you have to give women a chance, and women's movies do well and all that. But ultimately, it comes down to the quality of the art, not the
Well, also awards in themselves are always highly political. Exactly. And I don't mean in terms of wokeness or not, although that's often a factor. Like the National Book Award. And, you know, awards are now subject to sort of quotas, like, you know. And
book reviews. I don't trust a lot of book reviews or movie reviews. In the New York Times, not all of them, several of their reviewers will evaluate a book or a movie primarily on representation. Now, I have nothing against representation. In fact, I'm in favor of it, have a diverse set of characters, but I care about the quality of the writing and the story far more. But that is now second place.
I think you're revving up for a rant on this topic that you're going to do after.
I have a rant about one of the most irritating tweets. And I keep a file now. I keep a file. I'm going to my file.
We got to save this for the rant, Christina.
No, it just...
For those of you.
Just for those who are Patreons, be prepared.
And we've now got more places where you can help support us, so you can also hear Christina go mental once a week if you want to.
This was just a sanctimonious little tweet from Equality Can't Wait. Once again, it's that Melinda Gates founded group, which is saying to women, you know, try to read more books by women. Read books.
Okay, stop. You have to save it for the paying public.
Everybody reads books by women.
Okay, stop.
Okay.
Stop. We're moving on. And what I really want to rant about and talk about, but you never, ever let me, because it's not equal in this studio, Christina. We talk about Gamergate. We talk about the blind audition.
The blind audition
not
study.
The blind
the blonde audition
Not
study.
that. No. I want to talk about the Royals. I want to talk about Megxit.
I'm willing to talk about it because, boy, at first I sort of felt sorry for them. And I heard Prince Harry saying, you know, very earnestly how he had lost his mother because of this predatory attention, and that he felt very protective of his wife, and there had been racist insults and so forth, and you just felt very bad for him. But the next thing I notice is that they have a brand. I mean, now what is it?
Sussex Royal.
SussexRoyal.com. And there seems to be some marketing schemes in the...
Oh, yeah. She signed voiceover deals with Disney.
And he promoted them.
Yeah, when they were a lineup. No, it's quite bizarre, and I don't know how many people care about the royal family and what's going on there. But the strangest thing of all of this was the secrecy and the sudden bust up and the way it was handled. And you could make whatever excuses you wanted, like, oh, yes, the press wasn't nice to her, as if they're ever really nice to any royal.
Were they nice to Fergie?
Were they nice to Princess Diana had terrible press. Camilla had terrible. They've all had terrible press. Kate Middleton, Waity Katie, she had a lot of bad press.
Waity Katie? They thought she was fat?
No. WAIT-Y, not WEIJ. Because remember, they dated for like 8 years before they got married. William and Kate got married. So anyway, all of them have had bad press. But even if they want to break away, which Tina Brown, who's been on this podcast, and I was thinking of her, and I thought, oh man, I wonder if we could get her to call in and give us a lowdown on this. But then she was on the Today Show, of course. Right. So she noted that Harry has been giving signs of wanting to get out for a while, ever since he left the army, that he's mentally distressed.
He had a hard time getting anyone to marry him. Apparently, there were a lot of girls that just looked at. Well, nobody wanted this. Exactly. It's. I mean, you don't want to say it's a tough life. Would you do it? All that. I would. I
just get it's boring. But she came in. But she came in. Meghan came into it knowing that, not really because she's American and an actress, not getting, the royal family probably very well, but she. And now, they clearly plotted this for maybe even up to a year. This whole idea that, we'll just take a 6-week break. We'll go to Canada. We'll not see, any of our relatives. Prince Philip is dying. I mean, he was always close to his grandparents. We'll not see the king and queen, Elizabeth and the Duke at Christmas. We're not coming up for any pre-Christmas activities. We're leaving.
You're unusually involved in this. You're emotionally.
I know. I get upset. But then they ditched them, and they did it without warning. And they'd clearly been planning it. She got right back on a plane and went back to Canada, where she'd left her baby and the dogs.
And the dogs?
And the dogs. Like, they never intended to come back. And now they just want to work out the whole financial system. But it is about, they're going to find, somebody had a very good observation, that the kind of fame and celebrity that you have outside of the royal family is so much more precarious and shoddy. And, within the royal family, it might be boring, cutting ribbons for hospitals, but they had great causes. They had great patronages.
They got to go to Balmoral.
They got to travel the world. They got all this, great, they got a lot of good press. And now they're stepping outside, and you'd get that for life.
They're going to be like Instagram influencers.
No, they're going to be like the Kardashians. And they're going to start taking on causes that are going to look like, so in Canada, I think to keep up her profile, Meghan Markle started dropping into these Vancouver women's spaces. And one of the ones she dropped into was a women's group that discusses, get this, climate justice for girls, and argues that girls are more negatively impacted by climate change than men. Like, it's just,
it dries your skin. It's a serious issue.
The humidity does it. My hair,
and your
hair.
There.
But anyway, so here she is being photographed with this it's a very political group, and it politicizes the royal family too. Like, the good thing about patronages, like you're head of the Royal Academy or whatever, you don't get into these sort of divisive or, boneheaded kind of political groups. And now that's all going to change. So yes, they want to be the Clooneys or even some sort of higher version of the Kardashians, but it's going to be...
They're going to be like the Wallace Simpson. And
no, because at least he was a king. He did still retain the ex-king status. But no, they're just going to find that, you know what? No one cares. No one cares. 2 years from now, no one cares about you. And I would just say in general, don't trust any man or woman who separates you from your family and friends.
which he has been isolated from his best friends.
And his family. And she's isolated from her family. Well, okay, thank you for indulging me. Crown Watchers.
They need relationship counseling from the femsplainers.
I think she's a narcissist. I don't say that lightly, but I can elaborate that on another time.
Sort of like
he just seems like a poor, helpless. Like
I say,
but he wanted out.
I'm suspecting that he may be. Can I say kitty whipped?
Oh
no. No. Okay. I'm just suspecting it.
Well, it's hard to feel sorry for people who are standing in Africa with landmine victims. Well, the press takes photographs, and Harry says that the sound of the shutters give him PTSD because his mother died, because of the paparazzi. They're saying that in front of landmine victims, and she's saying no one asks how she is in Africa. So
she's saying no one asks how she is.
So anyway, okay. Well, let's move on to some more cheerful stuff. We've got 2 items this week in female body part news. And
just let it be known that I protest this part of the podcast. I protest, and I'm a conscientious objector. Go.
Okay. So I'm guessing, Christina, you're not going to be a supporter of the Free the Nipple campaign, which has just had a stunning defeat. The Supreme Court has refused to review the convictions of 3 women who went topless at a New Hampshire beach in the name of Free the Nipple.
Are there photographs of those women? Because it's never the women you want.
Okay, the lead one, just show her to you. Won't even say her name.
Okay.
Well, let's put it this way. One of the reasons she wants to go topless is she's got some pretty big ass tattoos. Well, I shouldn't say big ass because that's not where they are, on her chest.
She has that as well.
And she is not, I'm just going to be ageist and sexist. She's not of the age or appearance that many people would take pleasure in seeing topless.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
I mean, I don't like seeing misshapen old men.
Or old Italian men in Speedos. They should be banned.
It should be banned.
They should be banned. Well, anyway, no, but it's also, I hate this idea. This just goes back to our theme of why do women have to be treated, why is it equality if we have to be treated exactly the same as men as if we're men? And when you're saying if men can go topless, then women should too, it's denying any sexuality to women's breasts. That it denies that they have, that you may as well just be walking around without a shirt and nobody should care. And that takes away the whole,
Just, it renders the whole, it's all ridiculous and denying reality. And it's going to create endless numbers of problems. And in a minute, I'm going to talk about my dear friend Roger Scruton, who died recently, and he was a conservative in the sense of a kind of moral conservationist, and he warned that he wasn't against progress, but he was against radicalism. And
he was also a huge advocate for beauty and
loveliness. I think he would make an exception for, the Venus de Milo, but
she could be topless.
She could be topless. And the models in, all of the Botticelli and Titian paintings were fine. But he pointed out that you always have to hesitate before you bring in some revolutionary change to a society, because there may have been a reason why over, thousands of years of civilization, we developed certain codes of conduct and practices of, some certain modesty. And you can question it and you can push the envelope and, and all of that. But for women, first of all, most women do not wish to free the nipple if they took a poll. I mean, does anybody? Do you want?
Ella, do you feel that your nipples are oppressed?
No, I don't even like it when people don't wear bras in public.
Yeah, I find that a little weird too. It's sort of distracting. Yeah.
And I didn't even like it when I was in 16 in gym class. I didn't want to see all that when girls were undressing.
Well,
most people don't look that great.
Most people, what you're saying is they don't want to free the nipple.
I don't want to free the nipple. I want, I mean, I don't mind bikinis on a beach, that could be one.
I mean, it's not like bikinis are so, it's not like we're wearing burkinis or 19th century bathing costumes when we go to the beach. It's not like wearing a bikini isn't, they're now just tiny microscopic bits of fabric on people's bodies. So, but why do we have to see the whole thing? I mean, then you take away, the sort of, that's the thing. You take away the sexuality of the breast once you start treating it as an elbow or a shoulder.
And also, it's sensitive. And men's breasts are, it's just different.
Well, you're not going to like this next item either, Christina. I think we should just have a segment for these types of items on the show. We can call it the V-spot.
Oh, no. Oh, this is okay.
Okay.
What is it going to be? And I hope it doesn't involve Gwyneth Paltrow.
It does. Gwyneth Paltrow has released a candle, and the name of the candle is "This Smells Like My Vagina." It's a candle that apparently smells, I assume, like her vagina.
Ooh.
I don't know that. I mean, maybe there is a generic scent like roses or lavender. There's a kind of
oh dear,
musky vagina scent.
Do they have candles?
It's already sold out. It's sold out, and it's $75.
Who's buying?
I don't know.
Fetishists and predators and
no, I bet women who have meditation spaces and are putting those kind of eggs inside themselves. But it's
this is how men got ahead, right? This reinforces the worst stereotypes about dizzy broads.
I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Oh, wait a minute. You want one?
I'm just
Admit
thinking,
it. Did you get one?
No, they're sold out apparently. But no, but
if you ever have one,
can you imagine?
I don't even want to. It's repulsive.
Can you imagine? Okay, let's if men did this,
let's have
sweaty scrotum.
Yeah, can you imagine? Underarm,
jock itch.
Oh, God.
Or you could come up with fanciful names for like chlamydia. Nobody might really know what that is. Or yeast infection.
Oh, yeah.
That would be very smelly.
Very pungent.
I think the rule about it is if you can smell it, maybe you should shower. Like the minute you're...
And there's another rule. Don't do it. Move on. Did she ask her?
No, but
ask
okay.
her mother.
Okay, but you know what? Okay, but this is the funniest thing. So having come out with this questionable candle, she blames any kind of reaction such as we might be expressing. Mm-hmm. She said that she released this at this conference of new products. She said, "I think people have mixed reactions to me and to all women stepping outside the box, no pun intended, that they are very comfortable with us being in and doing something else." Well, she said she says, sometimes I think of the headwinds I've had to face, the breaking winds, new candle scent, I've had to face growing this business. And she complains that she's come up a lot. So if you don't like this candle,
it reminds me
you're a
of
sexist.
One thing I read. It made a big impression on me years ago. Only the French would come up with this. That if you want I mean, assuming you've had a shower and all of that. But if you want to improve, how do I put this?
The scent?
The taste.
Yeah.
You should drink pomegranate juice, men and women. I don't know what I'm saying.
You tried this?
No.
Is it in Snopes? What if they made the candle? It's a very elegant looking candle. It's like in a black jar and like the white, wax. What if you made it look like a vagina and then like the wick? Think of where you'd put the wick.
Yes. and then you could have what would be like little streamers. That would be like the.
No, that would be it'd be like a votive, and then you'd put it in a. Okay. And I think, I don't think we should talk further about this because I think we've got a fabulous business idea. And if we're not discriminated against, we should patent this.
For all sorts of...
call it
body...
pudenda.
Scents. No, but why limit it to the vagina? Let's do...
How about halitosis? Halitosis.
Yeah.
These I'm coming up with great.
Breath. If I could market her breath, I mean, it could
dog breath.
It could serve to stop crime. How people wouldn't come in. And I can't stop. I send away for products. I brush her teeth.
Maybe you should just.
And she's this cute.
Light this candle, and as you say, no one will come near her. She's a guard dog, not because of her bark, but what comes out after her bark.
Right.
The big misty cloud of halitosis. But anyway, let's welcome on Marissa Orr, author of Lean Out, The Truth About Women, Power, and the Workplace. Marissa, welcome to the Femsplainers.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have you. I mean, one of the things, you've really been inside the belly of the beast. You spent 15 years working for Google and Facebook. You now give a lot of talks about your experience and what I guess became your book on your Lean Out premise. And so we want to hear about it. Tell us about how you came to write Lean Out.
It's kind of a fun, interesting story, hopefully. And it kind of all started around the time Lean In came out in 2013, 2014. Google came out with a slew of female leadership workshops and trainings and programs. And I've really always been passionate or fascinated, intrigued, interested in women's issues and helping women. So I attended everything that they offered, but I quickly became disenchanted because the conversation just seemed to be a bit phony. It lacked honesty or practicality. And, sometimes we'd go to these seminars and there would be, there's senior executives from Google leading the conversation. I remember one time I worked for this woman who was on stage lecturing us on how to succeed. And I turned to my friend next to me who had also worked for this woman, and I was like, this woman hates other women more so than anyone I've ever known.
Oh.
She is on stage, lecturing us on female empowerment. So eventually I decided to write my own perspective on the topic. And it started out, I delivered it as a presentation to 5 women in a conference room.
This is when you were at Google?
Yeah.
Yep.
Most of them were my good friends who I coerced into being there, but it soon grew and other women started to attend, and it turned from one presentation into a series of lectures. Amidst all of that, the success with the side projects and all that, amidst all of this, in March of 2015, I got a call from Facebook about a job. And from there, things turned out differently than I could have ever imagined. And I ended up leaving Google and started Facebook in February of 2016.
So talk about some of the differences between leaning out versus leaning in.
Yeah. Lean In and books of that nature really pin the blame for the gender gap on stereotypes and cultural oppression. And honestly, they're prescriptions and solutions then are for women to act more like men. Whereas in Lean Out, I say and believe, like, if men and women want and need different things at work, that is okay, that we should listen to women's needs instead of dismissing them as a product of cultural oppression. If they want to need different things, then, let's look at the corporate structure and see what maybe needs to change to better meet the needs of women, because I find sort of the current mainstream lean-in philosophy very dismissive of women. So it presents kind of a counter-argument to show why that theory doesn't actually hold up, and then presents sort of a new way of understanding the gender gap and kind of a new way forward.
Well, one of the things you discovered is that what we think of, we completely accept that women have a problem with confidence. Strong women are perceived as bossy, that they're not good negotiators. I mean, you go through your book and you sort of
she says these things aren't true.
They're just simply not true. I mean, maybe let's what have we gotten wrong with women? What have these women and all these programs that you point out?
And all these cliches.
I mean, you have this great number here. It says, over the past 20 years, across both public and private sectors, tremendous amounts of resources, time, and attention have been invested in trying to promote more women into power, and the numbers have not budged. That female CEOs of Fortune 500 companies were 0 in 1972. They're now 4.8%, and the wage gap has narrowed from about 73% in 1998 to 80% in 2018. So all of these bazillions of dollars, these programs, these Sheryl Sandberg approaches have not worked.
Lean Out groups. She had groups where women got together.
We're supposed to.
Lean-in circles, nothing has worked.
So why have they not worked?
Right. We keep throwing the same thing against the wall. It's like if you had a project at work and showed this much progress in 20 or 30 years of resource, you'd be fired, right? Mm-hmm. So it's insanity. The book really talks about the real issues through the lens of the corporate structure. Because the corporate structure, essentially, they're all the same. It's a triangle, right? It's a competition for power and dominance, and it's a zero-sum game. If you win a promotion, that means I lost a promotion. And at Google and Facebook and lots of other companies, employees are graded on a distribution, which means on your team with your peers and your coworkers, you can't be equally great or equally terrible. You're all ranked against each other in sort of this bell curve distribution. So if you have 5 people on a team that did spectacular one quarter, a manager has to figure out who's going to get the A, the B, the C, the D, and the F, even if everyone did amazing. So it's super competitive. And I talk about research that shows how men prefer and perform better in competition and win-lose games, and women perform better and are more motivated by win-win collaborative environments. So you have this, structure and systems drive behavior, not the other way around. So corporations become these political cesspools of people vying for power. Part of the book was, I felt betrayed by all the business literature and the management books that I had read over the years, a lot of them extolling these virtues of like empathy and listening and consensus building, which are things that I naturally am sort of more bent toward. And I would sort of try and not, quote unquote, lean into those attributes of myself. And they actually were a big barrier to advancement. And at some point I realized I didn't even know what game I was playing. I thought that this was, we're all going to work in the best interest of the business and we're all in it together. And then inevitably, like somebody I'd work closely with would throw us under the bus and I'd get all angry. And then I realized this is a zero-sum game. Like if you look at Prisoner's Dilemma, that's how it works. And so there was this disconnect between the management literature of what works and everything and how it actually works in a corporation. So I felt a little bit betrayed by that. All of their advice works in the real world, but the corporate world is not a microcosm of reality because people have absolute power over you, and it's like Game of Thrones.
Well, but I'm just thinking about what you're saying, and I mean, I would not be comfortable in an environment like that. I want to be left alone and work by myself at home.
Me
with
too.
Books. So maybe I'm just an introvert, but I think it would be a nightmare. So partly it's temperamental, and I know, there are people that thrive on it. Some women, probably the pool of people who thrive on it, there are women and men, probably more men.
They're similar.
Based on, surveys of personality traits and things. But are you thinking that do you think the corporate world has to be that way? And if not, how could it change? Because I'm thinking maybe this, it's this powerful institution that has produced riches, I mean, the private companies and this competitive market, and maybe that aspect of the real world just wasn't meant for you. But it's hard to imagine how to change it. I agree with you that it would be great if we could, but I hear arguments.
I wanted us to be honest about it. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, because I have to agree with everything you're saying. At some level, I didn't care what game it was, and I would have accepted that, but it presents itself as something that it's not. I didn't know what game I was playing and what the rules were, because I'm not a political animal like that. And when you have a competitive hierarchy where the rewards, people are driven to the top of those structures for power. And so what happens is, in a structure like that, only a small subset of personality profiles or types are motivated and rewarded by it. So you're always going to get a similar profile of people at the top. I used to joke, if you have 10 senior executives if you have 10 executives on a leadership team, 5 are women, 5 are men, but all 10 are aggressive narcissists. Does it still count as diversity?
It's not really the norm that I'm aware of. Or am I naive?
In the corporate world, it's very common. In fact, there's research that shows the disproportionate number of psychopaths that run big corporations versus the general population. It's true.
Well, yeah, sorry. Yeah, and you point this out, that these qualities, and they're not, maybe they're predominantly in women, versus men, where you talk about, wanting everyone to win and empathy and listening and all of that. But you said those benefit women in other arenas that isn't the corporate structure. So we're talking about something specific in the corporate structure, but in academia, that those qualities do get you far, and where your work is graded, on its quality. But in the corporate world, the personality you describe that succeeds isn't also necessarily the most productive person, is not necessarily doing the best for the company. And in fact, the people who could be listened to, who are coming up with solutions because they listen and have different strategies, aren't listened to because they're not, fitting into that type of personality. I found that sort of chilling, but it did explain why women are succeeding in some arenas and not in others.
Yeah. So in the corporate world, in today's knowledge economy, it's really hard to know who's doing a good job. Most of the time, you don't even know who's doing any work at all. We're not producing, we're not on an assembly line where you can count how many widgets you assembled that day, right? A lot of us build strategies, problem solve, create marketing campaigns. These are all things where the output is very difficult to measure. And sometimes the output and impact don't show up for a year, but meanwhile, you're graded for performance on a quarterly basis. So what ends up happening is we use these proxies to determine who's doing a good job and who's a great leader. And those proxies are things like they're visible, whatever behaviors are most visible. That's what our brain defaults to in such an environment of chaos and ambiguity. It's people who are more aggressive, are more self-aggrandizing, self-promoting. They talk the most. They dominate the most. Those are the proxies we use. So naturally, a certain personality type is going to surface more so than others. And these proxy behaviors of visibility correlate more highly with men, but they don't correlate more highly with leadership or competence. So the people that rise to the top have more of those aggressive behaviors simply because our brains are not sophisticated enough to understand, who's actually valuable. And I think I talk about this in the book, it was really fantastically displayed through Moneyball by Michael Lewis. Billy Beane had this crappy team that everyone thought was just crappy with these, supposedly crappy players. The subtext of that story is that we're really bad at judging talent in other people. Our brains aren't wired for it. So in baseball, they use these visible proxies like foot speed and attractiveness. And runs were more valued than walks, even though they were both 1 point. And Michael Lewis talks a little bit about that in his follow-up book, The Undoing Project, about how the reason people thought these Yankee players were so much better was not because they were better, but because they had these more visible behaviors. So if you use that analogy for the corporate world, sports, at least everyone agrees on what a point is or what a win looks like. You touch the plate or you don't. And in disagreements, there's an umpire there to help settle the disputes. So think about how much that tendency to misjudge talent is magnified in the corporate world, where there is no agreement on what success looks like or what a win is. It's just this chaos of ambiguity. So we default to these visible behaviors even more so. And
Right.
They practically run the show.
You said the person is rewarded for seeming to be successful. So if you are more boastful about your success, but if you're the guy who is giving a big show about what he's doing, even if he's not contributing a lot or he's not doing that well, that counts more than, in many places than the actual numbers.
Let me just push back a tiny bit. Yeah. Sheryl Sandberg, to me, seems like someone with fairly high emotional intelligence. I have occasionally met some CEOs, and I think that to rise that high, yes, you have to have all these talents. Obviously, ambition is what, but most of them that I've met have emotional intelligence. They're people like them. They're attractive human beings who are just so immensely talented that they are promoted to the top. Is that naive, wrong, confused?
Well, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that, because I think there are certainly examples of really great dynamic leaders who rise to the top of the corporate world. And one thing to distinguish, too, is there's a big difference between a Bill Gates who starts his own company and builds it from scratch, or even a Mark Zuckerberg, than somebody who rises within the ranks of an existing organization. Those require two very different skill sets and personalities. So sometimes, at the top of certain tech companies or self-made companies, you get somebody that does have sort of this wide range of a personality more so than others. But I do think that there are great leaders out there in the corporate world. It's not a black and white thing where I'm saying, everyone that gets to the top is a psychopath. Mm-hmm. My point is rather the people I saw rising were not necessarily the best leaders. Sometimes they were horribly toxic, terribly abusive people, but they could play the game. They were really great at playing the game. And some people are great at playing the game by being likable or charming on the surface and ruthless underneath.
This, to go back to your question of how do we can we make the corporate world better? And this other idea, which I thought you were really, really good on in the book, that when you had this poll, I think it was a Kinsey poll, asking people about whether they want to be CEOs. And 42% of men and women, the same percentage, didn't want to. They said, I wouldn't be able to balance family and work commitments. 40% of men and 39% of women thought there'd be too much politics. And then 35% of women and 37% of men said, I'm not interested in that type of work. So for most women and men, being at a company, it's like for you, it's a salary. I have to survive. But we don't want to get to the top. So what are you doing? I mean, you're speaking of this, as you say, as a mother with you had 3 children under 3 or something when this was going on?
My twins you had twins?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
My twins were born when my older one was only 2. And so I had, yeah.
And then you got divorced.
When the twins were, I guess they were just under 3. So they were about 2.5, 3, and my older one was 4.5, 5. Yeah, we moved to a new town. It was insane. I was working at Google at that time.
So what is the thing that you really need as a woman, let alone a single mother, to be successful in these companies? What would really help? How do you get ahead? What do you do?
So one of the things I talk about a lot in the book is the concept of motivation. Because in the corporate world, once you get past maybe middle management, I don't know exactly when it is, but the law of diminishing marginal returns kind of takes over with respect to salary. With each incremental raise becomes less impactful and less satisfying. If you get a $20,000 raise and you're making $50K a year, that's life-changing. Mm-hmm. But if you're making $250K a year, it has less of it's hardly the thing that pushes somebody to go from the bottom to the top and really work really hard. So, what's left? What's motivating somebody to climb higher and higher? Well, the only other thing you get with a promotion is power. Each promotion comes with more power over more people. But if you're someone like me, having formal authority and power over people is not only unsatisfying, but it's uncomfortable because authority and relationships are in tension with each other. And I talk about these personality tests that we did that showed that I have like the very hippie earth green personality where I have a strong drive to help people and I strive for harmony and I prioritize relationships. And the opposite type was a fiery red who prioritizes results over relationships and they're competitive and they strive for power and control. And I make the point that authority and relationships are in tension with each other. So if you're on a team with your 2 best friends for years and you get promoted to be their manager, if you flex that position of authority and you're all like, I'm the boss lady now, and you're command and control, what happens? Your relationships with them suffer. But if you do nothing and pretend that nothing's changed and you're still their best buddy, what happens? Your authority is undermined. So these things are in tension with each other and everyone's more motivated by one over the other. So what happens is for someone like me, in order to advance at Google, my last promotion, even though I had the highest scores in the team, the policy was I had to start managing people. And I really did. I'm very creative. I like to dig into the project. I love being a coach and a mentor, but sort of having that formal authority. I mean, my personality type's a hippie. What kind of hippie wants to be CEO? So I had this real issue with it. And when I understood this about my personality, I had this naive notion that if I explained this to my manager, like, hey, I'm more motivated by relationships, so maybe you can exempt me from that policy and give me a reward that I actually want, because management clearly to me is more of a punishment than a reward. I figured, oh yeah, they'll exempt me from the policy because they want to keep me, happy and motivated. And my manager at the time was great. She said that our senior VP had heard this argument before, but remained steadfast in her view that in order to advance your career and grow Google, you have to manage more and more people. And at the time, at first I was dumbfounded. I'm like, why wouldn't they want to motivate their best people to keep going? But after lots of experience, I really learned what no business book ever taught me, which was what I saw as a simple difference in personality, these other people saw as weakness. And so growth is associated with increased power and authority over other people. Now, tons of research shows that women are less motivated by this like kind of authority over other people. I think there was one study that showed women who had the authority to hire and fire people were less happy than women without that. And it was the reverse for men. And people, get very upset when you talk about this because they assume that what you're saying is women don't want power, which is not at all true. It's a very specific kind of power, one that's very male-oriented, and more men are motivated by. But power is such a more broad and expansive idea than just, having power, formal power over somebody else. And I use the example, like, look at Martin Luther King. Would you argue he was not a powerful figure in society? But he wasn't powerful because he had minions that he lorded over and had, control over their livelihood like a corporate executive. There's lots of different types of power. And so the point, long-winded point of getting back to your question of, it's really for me it's about motivation. So many women get stuck under the glass ceiling, not because they're less competent or because, they're less ambitious. They simply lack anything meaningful to work toward. They're much less motivated by competition, which is what all these corporate structures are. They have more life goals than men. Men have fewer life goals. They're more focused on money and rank in their career. And what comes with a promotion in the corporate world? Money and rank. And what else comes with a promotion? You got more responsibility, which means more face time in the office, which reduces your flexibility and your balance and your ability to meet a larger variety of life goals. Like, nobody works their way up to the top of a multinational conglomerate so that they could have more balance in their life, right?
I was thinking they should have a track for very successful employees who would be like you, or I would identify as not a hippie, but a flower child.
Yeah, you'd be a hippie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a hippie.
Free spirit.
Yeah, free spirit. But what I would love would be you can spend more. You can work from home, or you can disappear for 3 months and no one will ask any questions because you were so successful. You did so much for this company.
I don't think that disappearing for 3 months. We'd assume you'd been eaten by your cat.
Well, I'll be in. Where do I want to go now?
No, but it's
Polynesia.
But it's a real point. I think you said this too in your book, Marissa, that you actually got up at a conference and with one of these power women and suggested that why can't women be given more options? Maybe they don't want this promotion. They want to have more, balance, more working from home arrangements, or they'll take less salaries to be more flexible. And you got cut dead by this woman who said, what, are you saying women don't like money? And no, you weren't saying that. But there has to be room for people who do like mentoring and do want different things out of the workplace. But as it's organized now, it isn't. And just trying to shove women these round pegs into the square corporate holes is sort of not leading to any advancement for anyone, least of all women.
Yeah, that woman tore my ass down when I asked that question. And she wasn't even an executive. She was an author. She wrote one of these books, about how women, fail to negotiate and fail on every dimension possible. But
that's one of these myths, by the way. That I think.
Yeah, totally.
It was Claudia Golden at Harvard that says that doesn't really explain why there's very little of the wage gap is explained by the problem with women negotiating.
Absolutely, and.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were making an interesting.
No, that's okay. One of the byproducts of this kind of mainstream conventional wisdom, and one of the reasons I wrote this book, and one of the most profound reactions I've had from women, is that because of all of this, we're forcing, round pegs into square holes, as you said, is that women in the business world, like me, always felt like there was something wrong with us. Mm-hmm. And that is the most poignant, profound, emotional reaction I get from women is like, thank you for writing this because I felt like I was I've been in crazy town. Like there's something fundamentally wrong with who I am. And so that's a byproduct of these messages. We think it's helping women, but it's really alienating them, I think, more than anything. The rise of female entrepreneurship, I am really encouraged by because I've seen it since I left the corporate world. It's really encouraging, and sometimes change happens not by tearing down the new, but by building the old. Mm-hmm. And power structures are really hard to change, So I think that I'm very encouraged by female entrepreneurship. I think female-led companies but part of the premise of Lean In is that in order to have change, you need women at the top in power to make those decisions. So there's some chicken and egg scenario. But I think Sheryl Sandberg disproves her own hypothesis because there was no change at Facebook that made it any different. It was way worse than Google. You couldn't have there's all these women leaving Facebook. There's articles about it online because there's no flexibility. You can't work from home. It was more hostile to women than Google was. So I don't think that, we need to get more women to the top because the women that get there, honestly, are more like men. I'm sorry to say it, but it's a profile of personality. It's not even about gender. It's just a certain profile that happens to follow along male lines. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it really is not even about gender.
Well, and to go back to your sort of semi-joke about needing a wife, I mean, this is the trade-off forever we talk about among a certain small group of women who want these very, very powerful careers. Whether you're a female entrepreneur or whether you're trying to be a CEO, you have to put in these hours. And if you're trying to, I mean, how did you do it with your little kids?
Before you ask that, I want to ask a question of all the women in this room and Marissa. Just be honest. If you had to choose, and I'm the genie, I can grant your wish.
Okay.
You can be the CEO of the most powerful company. We can make it attractive and women, whatever you want. You can be the CEO. You're going to have the corner suite. You're going to have $1 million+ a year, more, multimillionaire. You can be that. Or you can be the beloved wife of a man who has that position. And I'm just going to write it into the fantasy that he loves you. He's not going to leave you when you're, 45. It's a life.
I can answer this very quickly.
Okay, let's go around the table. So Marissa, you start.
Yeah.
I would be the wife because I'd want the money. In that scenario, the only thing that's attractive to me is the money. I'd love to be rich. I mean, I'm poor now, so I'd love to be rich. And I would hate to be a CEO. The work involved in that, it would be soul-crushing to me. So if I could get the money without having to do the work, this is a no-brainer for me.
Okay, Ella?
I already tell my friends that my goal is to be a Victorian housewife.
I love it.
I would just.
And this is from our brilliant NYU.
Oh my goodness,
honors graduate.
Reveals. All right, Christina. I think I'm guessing your answer.
Oh, no question. And it's not. I mean, the money, yes, but that wouldn't be the main reason. The main reason is I could have an interesting life, and go on trips, and decorate my house, and have a wonderful time with friends, and make a beautiful life. But I wouldn't have to be a workaholic. I wouldn't have to fly on planes all the time for work, and would feel
I'm going to shock you all.
Oh God!
Would I get to wear really fabulous clothes in my CEO role?
Yes, but you get.
Would I have a
more
big
time
office?
to shop if you're the wife?
And
there are the spas.
I kind of like running things, as you know, because I'm also very bossy. Although we're not allowed to say that, but
I mean, fire people.
I mean, I wouldn't take it over a happy. I mean, I think being happy in marriage or with a partner is critical to everything else. So whether you end up becoming a CEO or being a wife, whatever, I think our happiness does not come entirely from what we do.
I would have a job. I'd probably do what I'm doing now, but I would just do my thing when I wanted to. I would hate to have that pressure, and I would just find it tedious and frightening.
But
it would be great to be married to somebody who loved it and thrived, and you got to take all the trips without the stress.
But even without the genie, then how did you do it, Marissa? Like with your little kids and
well.
How could, I guess, we know you did it, you survived, but is there a way that it could have been made obviously easier for you from the company's view? Is there just small, we hear about we don't have paid, mandatory paid leave in the United States, which most wealthy countries do. Would that have helped, or not?
Well, first, just to go back to what your question was, part of the message of the book is be who you want, whether that's a coddled housewife or a ruthless CEO. Just own it. My disenchantment was really born from this idea we all had to be the same and want the same things. And so, every morning, almost every morning, I talk to my best friend from college, Sarah. She lives in Florida. And, without the millions of dollars part, she has a similar scenario. She's always at her kids' school. She doesn't, quote unquote, work or have, a standard job, but she's really active with the kids in the school. And, here I am, I'm trying to build this business, now that I left Facebook. It's very entrepreneurial what I'm doing, which is starting, a speaking career and trying to build, a personal brand and figure this out. And so, I'm stressed all the time. But Sarah and I still, it's I think she's very happy, and it works for her. That exact arrangement wouldn't work for me, but the whole spirit of the book is just be who you are and own it and screw everybody else. My daughter, I'm certain she is the bossiest bossy boss of anyone I've ever known.
Oh,
I'm scared of her. No. But I love that about her. I don't think bossy is a derogatory term, right? So she's bossy, but I love her for it. I learn from her every day. I think, what would Shelby do in a situation where I'm being too meek or being a pushover? I channel her, and I hope in certain scenarios to teach her, to sometimes channel the other qualities that I have are very different. So just to, end that question on that note, but I think the way that I've handled sort of the magnitude of what's been on my plate over the years is to figure out what really matters in each dimension and then forgetting about everything else. So do my kids eat too many hot dogs too many nights a week? Probably. Are they not showering probably as much as, other people would say, as the benchmark? But they're clean and they're fed. What's important is that I'm emotionally connected to them. I'm very close to my kids. We have a wonderful relationship. And so I try and figure out what am I doing that's a result of comparing myself to what other people are doing and feeling it's important because everyone else is doing it, but versus what truly matters. And so I try and strip it away into the very core elements of what matters. So spending time with them and nurturing relationship and connection is number one. And, if I were a good cook and I ate better myself, they'd probably eat less hot dogs. But you have to have a trade-off somewhere. And I think that's the decision. Everyone said, a question I get is can you have it all? I think, if you define all for yourself and recognize that whatever you do, there's going to be a trade-off. There's trade-offs for men too, right? Mm-hmm. When they spend all their waking hours in the office to climb the ladder or do whatever, they're trade-offs. They're compromising probably the relationship with their spouse or their kids. They're not going to know their kids as much. But if that's a trade-off that they're okay with making, fine. And if you're a woman and that's a trade-off you're okay with making, own it. So I think there's trade-offs for men and women and in anything in life. And there's never going to be this, perfect scenario. Or maybe there is, and I'm just not looking at it right. But anyway.
Well, it's funny.
I think
Sorry, no, I was just going to say it's funny to me that Google and Facebook, these, super cool, high-tech, founded by young people, turn out to be as, brutal and ruthless as any other company.
If not more. They sound even more because they pretend to be all about, we're going to play
But I think it's still going to
color teams.
Be about millennials and maybe Gen Z saving us and reinventing this whole world for us. Marissa, thank you for being on. Christina, did you have another question?
I just want to say how important her book is.
Yeah, it really is.
And you kept saying, not everyone's the same. Not all women are the same. And we want different things. And it's too bad that sort of what the organized women's movement seems to be focused on, that, maybe 20% of women who are high-octane careerists and want just what the most competitive man wants. But the majority of women and a lot of men aren't like that. And I just felt you were a voice for the disenfranchised and the silenced.
Yeah, and we want your book and your speaking career to go well because so many women need to hear this message.
Need to hear your message.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's been so much fun. I feel from the beginning, I've been listening to you guys for a while now, and I just feel like so many levels of kindred spirits. So I really am so thrilled to have been able to talk to you about all this stuff. So thank you.
Well, you're one of our favorite femme-splainers.
Such a good topic, and we need more of it. All right. Thanks, Marissa.
Thank you.
Well, that was fascinating. And in the end, it comes back to, I guess what she's saying is what you value, what makes your life worthwhile. What are the sacrifices you can or are willing to make?
It is interesting. She pointed out that, and I've seen the data, and they asked men and women, what do you value in a job? And women, they're just a very complicated set of things they value in and outside the job. It's just maybe women just have slightly different preferences from men. On average, they're going to be men. When I talked about, would I rather be married to a CEO or be the wife of a successful CEO? The beloved wife.
It's kind of critical there.
Through life, yeah. But that's the problem. You don't want to do that because so many of these marriages don't last. But
not the temporary arm candy.
Yeah, yeah, and then replaced by. No, because it's actually a few gay couples I know where one person is sort of the hard-charging careerist, and then there's the other.
Well, especially when they have kids. There's always someone who...
There is.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, who would I want to be in that? It's not strictly a male-female thing, but because I see it in gay marriages where there's someone that's a little more of a homemaker, or even if they don't have kids, just a little...
Right. Or less the corporate-driven, as she described, the person who is more creative or wants a different type of existence.
But I just like very much that I'm surprised there haven't been more books like this.
Yeah, well, maybe
yours was like that. I mean, you wrote
what our mothers didn't tell us, which was about understanding that the career, if that's how you're minded to go, is in the end you're going to want to, and I think this is true of men too. You're going to want to be able to structure your life. To have room for other things, especially your children and, of course, especially your marriage. But instead of going on to our listener reaction, we wanted to talk a little bit about your friend. I knew him a little bit, Sir Roger Scruton, because here was a man who understood what was important in life. I mean, he was a philosopher. He wrote a lot about aesthetics and beauty, but he was also someone who, as you pointed out, he was seen as a conservative because he was a great traditionalist, fought for preserving things worth fighting for and preserving. And you knew him really, really well.
I knew him. Yes, we met in the late 70s and became just instantly. We had a rapport, and he was a close friend. And I'm just so sad that he's gone. I can't actually believe it. But he in terms of the things we were talking about, he thought that he came from a working class background. He came from a poor background, but he managed to find his way into Cambridge University. Where
he was British. If we haven't already said that,
yes, Sir Roger. He later became Sir, but he was not born to wealth or. In fact, his father was, working class and really hated the snobs and the posh set. And when Roger was accepted into Cambridge University, with full scholarship, and his father was furious, and just thought he had contempt for the wealthy, and then Roger.
Well, also there was a prejudice against sort of book reading and that kind of waste of time.
But here was this brilliant, multi-talented. Frankly, I mean, he was a genius, and he could do everything. I mean, he didn't only write philosophy. He wrote operas, novels, poetry. Yeah. He played the piano. He was a music critic. He was a wine critic.
Ooh.
He was a wine critic for, I forget where he was a wine critic, in one of the British newspapers. And he excelled at everything, but he thought that taking the time to appreciate great beauty, he thought it was the birthright of every human being. And I think it's partly because he hadn't had that as a child, but he learned about it. And he had a classical education, and he was exposed to these towering works of beauty and genius, and that he studied at Oxford, the art and the literature, the philosophy, and he valued that. And he's not correctly described as a conservative in the sense, the political sense.
He was kind of boxed or pegged that way.
Yeah. But he contained multitudes, and he couldn't be defined in any simple way, because he thought that the market and consumerism was as much a threat to the human spirit as maybe not as much, but it was a threat to the human spirit as totalitarian systems. He fought both. Mm-hmm. He fought any system that he thought was degrading to the human spirit, but he did it with humor. He was self-deprecating. He was one of the best lecturers.
He was a great companion. I mean, I met him a couple times at your house.
Just a great conversationalist.
Great conversationalist. And didn't you once? Weren't you once on a drive with him where you got in trouble with the police?
Oh yes, we were driving home. It was late at night. We were on Connecticut Avenue, and I think it was maybe the only time he was driving. He wanted to drive my car. Maybe I had too much wine. I'm not sure. He'd had a lot too. No, nobody had wine. He was driving.
It was very responsible.
It was responsible. But we were pulled over, and this policeman came and wanted to see Roger's license. And Roger pulled out from his briefcase this ancient-looking document, and he carefully unfolded it.
The Magna Carta.
It looked like the Magna Carta. And I think they had Latin phrases, and he showed it to the policeman, and he had obtained it from, the Council of Gwent or somewhere. And the officer, this is a D.C. cop, and he looks at it, and he's shocked. He said, "Sir, this is not a legitimate, license in the District of Columbia." And Roger said, "No, it is. Look, and he would show him, and he actually threatened to arrest Roger on the spot, but Roger kept arguing. And eventually, he was just exasperated and let us go. But and then a couple of years later, I thought, well, that was a close call. A couple of years later, he wanted to borrow my car. I said, "Oh, did you get that license thing settled? You weren't." He said, "Oh no, I didn't need to." And there was this parchment, the Magna Carta.
That's not a driver's. That's a buggy license with the word buggy crossed out.
I don't know what this document was, but he believed it. And I don't know, I think the cop was a little worried that maybe it was legitimate.
Well, after he died, I went on his website to read about this, and I came across something that he had written they had put up on his website just before he died at Christmas about him observing a scene in winter. And it was so beautiful and sort of just took you directly to the meaning and purpose of life. I want to read a small segment of it before we go. But before we go, I just want to let everybody know that aside from being on Patreon now, where we all love your support and you get to ask us questions that we ask our authors and talk about in a secret monthly podcast, and the weekly rant that our subscribers get. It's coming. We're also now, there's a new spot called thinkspot.com. It's just starting up. It's got a lot of, I guess we want to say, is like-minded the right word? I don't think so, but because
dissident thinkers.
You'll find
liberal and conservative. You can't peg them politically. It's across the spectrum.
Right. And they're all coming together around this ThinkSpot. And you'll be able to find our podcast there, plus subscribe to the same bonus content as Patreon. And if you go there, it's thinkspot.com, and you use promo code FEMSPLAIN. And also on a new spot called glow.com, which makes it just very easy for you to download and listen to your favorite podcast. So we're there too, and the bonus content is there. So we have multiple places you can support us, people. And we need it. It keeps us going, and we're really, really, really grateful to you. So now...
And positive evaluations on...
Yes, iTunes. Always helps. Welcome. All right. Now, I would suggest if you don't have a glass of scotch or wine right now, before I read this little passage to you, you're filling up your port. Good. You should pause and go get some, and then sit down. And this is really Roger writing about how we can appreciate things around us, and he's writing about a winter scene. He says, "Our own green lane has retained its character as a living and healing thing, and in the winter it takes on a beautiful remoteness. Its soggy surface, bordered by blackthorn hedges where the red beads of bryony linger into the new year, acquires a faint silver sheen, and the sparse winter light lies in flakes on the waterlogged ruts as though scattered there. It is the winter that such place provide their most lasting refreshment to the eye, for life has retreated, leaving its many colors half hidden but perceivable, and the landscape is filled with a subtle counterpoint, the lesson so patiently taught by Corot, Turner, and Cézanne, that no natural object is truly monochrome, and that even in the blackest thicket can be discovered all the colors of the palette, is repeated in winter." And then he goes on to say, "It is an interesting exercise to stare into a dark, denuded hedgerow and count the colors. Every shade of red and blue, from salmon pink to scarlet, from deepest indigo to pale forget-me-not, is lurking there, recuperating from the light of summer. And as you watch these hues glimmer like embers, you come to understand some of the mystery of color, how red excludes green and yellow and blue, how white is somehow not a color at all, and the metal shades are like glosses in which colors are trapped and made invisible. These strange phenomena are not explained by the physics of light, a fact that Goethe noticed and which led him to compose his great treatise on color. They are not facts about things, but about us seen things. Pondering them, we are also pondering the mystery of consciousness. How is it that the world not only is, but also seems? And why was it not sufficient for the world to be?"
Oh.
Yeah.
Here's to Roger. I'm going to miss you, dear
R.I.P.
friend. Yeah.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Femsplainers. Keep up with us on Twitter and Facebook at Femsplainers and on Instagram at Femsplainers Podcast. Send questions and comments to contact@femsplainers.com.
A big thanks to Ella Ryder, our research and in-studio production assistant, and to Nat Frum, our audio and video editor. And we're proud to be part of the Ricochet Network and grateful to the American Enterprise Institute for allowing us to record in its studio every week in downtown Washington, D.C.
And miss something? You'll find everything you need at our homepage, femsplainers.com, including links to past episodes, our sponsors, where you can sign up to support us, and even to merch. And please don't forget to like us or give us 5 stars on iTunes.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.